Hi, I'm Justin and I'm a film photographer, and for the past 6 months I have been obsessed with emulating film stocks on my digital cameras. So stay tuned as I show you my analog snap presets. So, you may be asking, why film presets, Justin? We have film presets already. There are Fuji cameras that people love shooting JPEGs. Is there really a need for more film presets out there for Lightroom? Maybe there is. I'll get into the nuts and bolts of these presets in a little bit, but there's a couple of reasons why I decided to go down this path. I love film photography. I love shooting film. I'm not really so much about the process of shooting film. I love the aesthetic, right? I love that I don't really have to edit my images. I love that I have like a natural or nostalgic look that I remember film being. Film has a pleasing tonal curve, pleasing skin tones. And while I love Sony, I'm shooting on a Sony right now, I love the convenience of it. I love the autofocus. I love the dynamic range that these sensors have. I've never loved images straight out of camera, and I think a lot of people can agree with that. So film shooters out there, if they want the look of film on their digital cameras, they're going to use presets. So I have looked through a lot of presets out there. I've used some of the big ones, I won't name them, and they're good, right? But they've never given me the look of film that I've developed and scanned myself and taken through Negative Lag Pro. These film presets emulate the process of as high-end film scanning as you can possibly get and maintaining the analog look, but of course you're going to get all the digital conveniences of modern digital sensors. I have a 9-month-old, and while I love shooting an old SLR from the 80s that has a mechanical feel, for me, the most important thing is having eye autofocus and reliably being able to just like shoot a bunch of pictures to make sure I get the perfect moment with my son. And that is a higher priority to me than shooting film, but I still prefer the film look, hence the presets. And so that's what I set out to create, is presets that feel exactly like the scanning your own film, taking it into Negative Lab Pro off of a DSLR or mirrorless scan, and getting the absolute maximum results out of this film, customizable to your preference. But on the same side, if I want to just make a one-click edit, I totally can. I'm going to explain all that in a second. About price. The big problem that I was trying to solve with these is I feel like film presets should be priced based on the film stock. So if Kodak Gold is less than $15, $10 to $15, I want to be able to go and buy a preset just for Kodak Gold. I want to buy just Ektar, just Fuji 400H, just Cinestill 400D, and I don't want to have to purchase these film stocks that are completely unnecessary in order for a business to inflate the price of the product. So let's talk about analog snap. Right now I offer 6 presets: Cinestill 400D, 800T, Fuji 400H, Kodak Gold, Kodak Ektar, and Portra 400. These all can go into Lightroom and they can be applied with one click. And if you want to do a slight change to them, white balance and exposure should be all you need. For the Cinestill 400D and 800T, you can really quickly go into Photoshop and add the halation action and pop right back into Lightroom. It's a really quick round trip. So now let's hop into the computer and I will show you some example images. All right, so let's get into these images. First one here, we've got a nice high contrast image and the lighting already looks really great. So if I want to audition this, I think that 400D looks awesome. And it's pretty simple. You can see how much shadow detail, or how the lack of shadow detail rather, in this underexposed area below the window. And if we play with the exposure slider, we can kind of see what's happening here. A nice decent fall off. Of course, you would never do this with your image. And then sliding back down, you can see just by playing with the exposure slider that you're getting a nice luminance all the way through that's very film-like. And that's because if we go to the tone curve, it's not just the luminance channel, but it's actually the R, G, and B channels all have their own tone curve applied. So that makes it really easy to just come in here and adjust the exposure to get what we want. Of course, this was intended sort of to exposed for the outside with just a little bit of detail on the inside. So I think 400D looks really nice. You could go with 800T in the neutral day look. That would be nice as well. Or 400H I think looks really good. And then if you want to adjust the white balance, you could say, I want it to be a little bit warmer, make that metal look a little bit warmer, and then the outside to be a little bit brighter. You can do that. And then of course, if you really wanted to, you could, just like any raw preset, you can lower the exposure quite a lot. And this image is shot on the X100V actually. So I'm going to show you how the halation action works in another image coming up. We're actually not going to bring this into Photoshop right now. So here's a photo of my wife. This is Lake Tahoe, and it's for vacation. So I always think Kodak Gold. So here I'm going to look at Kodak Gold and then Kodak Gold 100 or 120. And while they're very similar, 120 gives you just a little bit more of a subtle tone variation. Almost all the presets come in with a white balance of daylight, but Kodak Gold comes in a little bit brighter at about 6,000. If you do want a daylight white balance, you just click daylight, which gives you a little bit more green. Of course, you can do the color picker as well, and that's going to give you more of like a green-blue hue. However, I like my gold to really pop, so I'm just going to reset this and bring it into Kodak Gold 120. To me, this exposure looks great. This is a cropped sensor, Canon M6, and it looks sort of exactly how I want it to. Here's a photo of my mom and my son. I think they look awesome here. And if you're like a family or portrait photographer and your exposure looks good already, it's easy to just come in here and do Portrait 120, really soft, low contrast look. I can bump the contrast, or I can go Portrait 35. That's great. And for this, maybe you do want to bring a little bit more warmth into it just by adjusting that white balance. That's really easy to do. And if you want a really, grain-free look, the 120 is going to give you that grain-free look. You just simply bump up the contrast, give a little bit more warmth. These presets are meant to be very, very easy and quick to apply. Coming here, obviously, we have the Golden Gate Bridge. So I'm thinking maybe Portrait, maybe Ektar. Let's try Ektar 100 here. I like Ektar not overexposed at all. I like it sort of on the slightly underexposed just to bring out that saturation. Although you can, of course, give that super pastel look if that's what you're into. Here also, maybe you do want to warm it up slightly, although I do feel that Portrait's a little bit cooler than Gold, and of course Portrait. But if you want a little bit more warmth, you can sort of see what that exposure is doing down here to the shadows and the plants. You're really given a look that you can dial in. Okay, so now moving on to 800T. 800T comes in two variations. You either have cool night or neutral day. Honestly, neutral day is going to work pretty well most of the time. Why are there two variations on white balance here? Well, it's because digital sensors and film react a little bit differently to white balance. And if you were to shoot 800T at a very mixed lighting scenario, it's going to have a very strong look, but you can also shoot it in the middle of the day and exposed properly, it's just going to look cool. So I gave you two white balances, and honestly, cool night is something that you're going to use outside at night. Neutral day, you're going to typically use that artificial light indoors or during the day. So here's an example of what 800T looks like. And I think you know it's already coming up here. These beautiful lights in the garage, and we're going to add some halation. So you can do this if you have the preset pack, all 6 stocks. You can add halation to any stock, but you can also just buy 400D or 800T and get the halation action as well. By pressing Command D, it's going to open it up in Photoshop, and I have a tutorial on the website to explain how this works, but I'm going to go halation night, run the action, and it's going to come on really strong, right? Because there is no perfect application of a halation action in Photoshop over digital images. There are multiple ways you can solve this problem. To me, the easiest way is to give you a strong look, and then you can dial it back. So all you have to do here is just take your eraser tool and erase this, some of this right here, bada bing, bada boom. And of course, those halations on the car highlight would be there under some circumstances if you were actually shooting the film stock, but I don't want them there. There's actually a little bit back here. So I'm just gonna erase those and then dial back the halation to about right there, which I'm just gonna save the image because that's how I want the halation action to act in the scenario. And if you've never done this sort of thing before, the round trip to Photoshop back to Lightroom is great. It just saves a TIFF, and you gotta be really careful because Lightroom will automatically apply the same preset twice. So just go ahead and press reset. You can always tell which one is the TIFF because you can see that you can't actually apply raw presets. They're grayed out. So that looks great, and you can see it's that simple. So here's another example of 800T that I would obviously use 800T for this preset. If we just reset it, so this is as shot, and this is 800T neutral day, but here's cool night, which looks a lot more accurate to my eyes. Once more, Command E to get into Photoshop. So here's nighttime. Once again, very strong halation. You can see it all over the place, and I'm just gonna dial this back slightly. You get that nice glow. Save it back into Lightroom. So next I wanna show you why I made underexposed versions of the film stocks. So this is a photo of my son in a hotel room. His backpack is blocking the light coming in through the window. So my solution here is to just put an underexposed preset, which to me, this is like exactly how I would expect a lot of images like from the 90s, from the early 2000s. If you're in a room like this, you're not a professional photographer, you're probably creating an image that looks something like this. So you can see the crushed shadows are really, the shadows are crushed exactly like you'd expect an underexposed film shot to look like. And then if you want to just bring some of the exposure back, you still have that nice, like milky, underexposed look. You can of course do this with Kodak Gold as well, and Fuji 100H, and also Portra 400 all has underexposed versions, which I think look really great. And a lot of times, if I'm in an artificial light setting and I'm not seeing a window and I want my image to look like film, I'd like to put an underexposed preset on there. Moving on, this is Hawaii. This was shot on a 6500, and I want sunshine. So I think I'm gonna go Kodak Gold. I love the way Kodak Gold renders here. It's not overly saturated. You still have a nice pop and a feeling of warmth, but overall a really clean image there. That looks exactly how I want it to look. And we can zoom in a little bit and kind of see the grain in the sky. Okay. This is shot on the A7S II with a vintage lens. So it's got a lot of low contrast haze going on already. This lens is from the 80s. And so I'm gonna go ahead and let's do 400H. 400H makes that nice green in the background pop, nice busy bokeh. To me, this has a white balance that I like already. I'm just gonna maybe lower the exposure slightly and bring the highlights down a little bit just to bring their shirts back in. And this is more a product of the lens than actually the raw file. So I'm really enjoying this. However, let's see what an auto white balance looks like. Pretty much the same. It comes in as daylight. That looks good. Maybe it's a little too cool for me, and I'll just add a little bit of warmth here. And if I want to give it a little bit of vintage look, I can just lower the contrast slightly. To me, nostalgia, but not overdone. Here's another image of Brooklyn. No, actually, this is Manhattan. I'm just going to do Portrait 400. You can see that it turns a nice sidewalk image of New York into a beautiful film-like image. Here's another image on the A7 S2, and let's do Kodak Gold. So if you want to give an image like a funky look to it, because a lot of film scans aren't like perfect, they're not going to really uphold the white balance the way you would like them to, you can always just play with the magenta sliders, add a little bit of green, a little bit of warmth, funky it up a little bit if you want to. But auto also works. Here's an image of my buddy Mike, and I think another underexposed opportunity looks cool here, or, you know, even Cinestill 800T, 400, looks great. So here's an example of like, if you really wanted to give yourself just this awesome halation because you have the windows in the background, you could always bring this into Photoshop and run the halation day action. And so now I'm just seeing this nice glow. I don't really want it on the side of the wall here, so it's as easy as taking the halation out of the wall. And if you do want like a lower intensity, you just lower the opacity of the top layer. Just adds a nice little character to your images. Okay, it always doubles up the preset, but it looks nice, a nice little glow. If you have a horribly underexposed image like this, of course, but your camera's still good, I'm just gonna add, this is of course San Francisco, add the Portrait 400, and you can just see by adding this exposure here, maybe a little bit of warmth. Not only are you correcting the exposure, but the way that the vegetation shadows kind of go into darkness in a very film-like way. You have the overexposed elements have a nice little hint of grain. Feels very film-like. I'm from Arizona, so of course I go to Sedona from time to time. This image just screams Ektar, so let's go ahead and do Ektar right here. And once again, Ektar, I like to bring it down so we get that saturation pop. However, Ektar 120 has this nice, really, really flat look. You can always bring the exposure back a little bit, the way that medium format film would have a nice flat look. Here's one of my favorite examples of using 800T. I come in here, I'm gonna see, do I like Cool Night? Yes, okay, I like it much more than Neutral Day. So I'm gonna apply Cinestill 800T, come into Photoshop, and here we are. And I'm gonna run the day halation action. I just love the way that you get this tiny little bit of glow. Adds a nice dreamy element. And so you see, that's literally a one-click thing. So really, really cool. All right, so this is a X100V, and the X100V has a 1/8 Pro Mist on there. Does a great job of lifting the image already and kind of softening the highlights. Of course, you can do this with any camera. You don't have to have an X100V for it. But you can just see that by bringing in, let's do Kodak Gold. Just feels really vintage, really nostalgic. Just one click. Make it really cool if you want to, like it was scanned in properly. A nice little green tint if you want to funkify it up a little bit, or just custom add a little bit of that warmth, a little bit of magenta. Looks really nice, very, very filmic. If you want to really crush the blacks, of course, just pop the contrast, lift the shadows, or bring the shadows up a little bit. and you've got yourself a really nice film-like image. If you want to destroy it by bringing the highlights down, that's your prerogative, but I think it looks kind of nice that way. Here's another example of, this is as shot on my Sony auto white balance. I love doing cool night in here, and just automatically, you don't need to use a halation action with 800T. I love using 800T in artificial lighting situations. It's really cool. Streets of San Francisco, Kodak Gold, immediate transformation into something that looks nice. Of course, if you want to add more grain, these all have grain added into them, but you can always just create a version of the preset that's really grainy for whatever reason. You can see here all that, the grain, and rough it up if you want to it to look really bad. So I think that's enough. I've showed you around the presets quite a lot. I think that in general, if you were to ask me what my favorite would be, it would probably be Kodak Gold, but I end up using 800T quite a lot as well. Okay, one more. So this is a shot of my wife on Humphreys Peak, which is the tallest mountain in Arizona, and it just screams Fuji 400H to me because it's got a cool palette. So Fuji 400H, the nice blacks are super crushed. She's almost silhouetted. We can still bring up the exposure without losing those beautiful crushed blacks. If we do want a little bit more warmth, easily add it. All right. I think that about does it. There you have it. I hope you enjoyed my little tour of Analog Snap. If you have any questions in the comments, please reach out to me. You can also send me an email at justin@analogsnap.com if you want some more product details. Go to the website if you're curious at all about the various offerings and the pricings available for Analog Snap. So thank you so much for watching. I actually intend, believe it or not, I promise I'm going to make videos for each film stock where I go out and I shoot just that stock that day. Like I go out intending to just shoot Kodak Gold or just Ektar, and I can show you just how fun it can be to go out, shoot raw, but bring it into the computer, convert all of your images as a batch, and get a wonderful analog look with just a few clicks of the button. So if you're looking forward to that, go ahead and subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next one. Thanks.